Okay, we're now officially being recorded to the cloud. Notice I did that after our introductions, so people wouldn't really know who we are. Um, because this is a systems one, it gives us a lot of latitude in what to discuss. The other interest groups, I think, tend to be more focused on a specific topic. Systems wise, systems is going to be so broad based on our differing situations. Some of us use Bywater as a support company, others are self supported, others are um, not even in the United States. Um, and so there's a lot of variety here of what we can talk about. Uh, what are people's thoughts? I kind of want to turn the floor over to anybody that has anything to say.
I guess I see these groups as being a generous gift for us to feel like we have support where we need it. And our library works with Bywater Solutions, but I need more education in order to have good conversations with them. You know, I think everybody benefits from more conversations in different contexts. So that's why I decided to attend, thinking I'm not sure that I'm a systems person, but it helps it helps me be a better partner to the people who are helping us through Bywater.
That is well said. One path we can take is to spend some time talking about specific issues. In future meetings, we could have a topic that we might want to discuss. It could simply be a lot of round robin question and answer. I know when I've attended meetings that way, they always start off slowly and then they get rolling with the first question or two, and people start, you know, answering that, which then brings up other questions. Um, or we can simply dive into some bug issues, some system things. Do you all watch the Bugzilla bug reports on a fairly regular basis? Got a few folks saying yes in the channel or in the chat. All right. Um, has anybody been following the one? I can't remember the number. I'd have to look it up. Where they're totally redoing the circulation rule um, interface. Does anybody happen to know that bug number? Is that something that anybody's interested in? That was something that I know whenever I was in a former life, I was a trainer for Bywater. And one of our difficulties was always helping people set up circulation rules. And because that page is so complicated. Jason, are you looking up the bug? You look like you're in the middle of
I'm
doing
trying to
something.
find it. I know that that's a Nichols funded one. I'll put it in the chat if I find it.
Okay.
And in these meetings, we like to race each other. So if somebody else gets there first, you get a point for beating me. Just
Oh,
saying.
all right. So somebody tried to beat Jason. I can't search and talk at the same time. And unless somebody else wants to talk, um, so we can do this kind of thing. We can talk about different bugs. We can talk about issues that relate to systems. I figure as we get closer to the upgrade cycles, either as co-op community is releasing the new version or any of us are going through an upgrade, we can talk about some issues that we might see there from a user perspective or a pure system perspective. I think Mitch might benefit from that, hearing some of those experiences.
I just want to add, I think you touched on something really interesting that we're all coming from such different perspectives. Some people are, kind of end users. Some of us are trainers. Some of us used to be trainers. We're kind of from all over the shop, which is really positive. But I suppose I don't know if anyone else is interested in this, but it would be interesting to look at system administration in terms of how we communicate the underlying logic of the system during training. So to take a really simple example, often in training I have to take a little time to explain, what item types are, just in the context of koha specifically. So it would be great if the group could take a little time and think about resources we could develop or direct each other to that could help people who perform training so we can communicate the information in a more clear manner. I don't know if anyone else is interested in that.
Oh, it looks like somebody found the bug. Yes, I'm one of the drawbacks that I always faced was finding the right resources for the right libraries.
I think, sorry, I just want to add, I think that's really well said. That's a really nice way to put it, Ed. The right resources for the right libraries.
There are a lot of times what's on the Koha wiki is really useful for those of us that already understand the system. But if you're new to it, it's very difficult to, it's sometimes very difficult to interpret that information. Okay, so this ties us in somehow to the education group. And I notice Jesse's not with us today. So does anybody have resources that they would like to mention that they can look at, that they would like to talk about, point other people to?
So I can definitely start off by just plugging koha-US. We do have a Learn From page that is broken down by the different modules. There's lots of good information there. I'll link that in the chat. And I am on part of the education committee as well. And what you guys are talking about, resources, finding the right thing for the right people, is a discussion we've had multiple times. So it's something that we're working on as well. But having support from this group and generating stuff like that would be extremely helpful. And we'd be happy to host that information wherever.
And sorry, I don't want to monopolize anything, but I just want to add, I know there's people here who are kind of using koha on the ground, as it were. So if you're using koha directly in your library, it would be great to hear back saying, well, I got this training and this didn't work for me, or it would have been great if they provided this resource. So don't be afraid to speak up if you're not a trainer yourself. It's always good to hear all perspectives.
One concern I have always had, and it's not a negative, it's just a concern, is we end up with so many really good small resources all over the place. And it's really hard for somebody that's just looking for something to understand the difference in somebody's blog that, depending on who it is, may be a great resource, and another that's difficult for me to say, but just finding the best resource given the versions and the amount of information that's out there on the internet about koha. I will occasionally do Google searches and find something that looks wonderful, and then the more I start to read about it, I realize, you know what, this is now obsolete, and it's that information's still out there. I'm reading some of the comments. So. Okay, we have a question, and I'm sorry if I'm not going to get the name right. I'm sorry about the koha releases and upgrades. Bywater does your upgrades for you. You are supported by Bywater, as I recall. They will schedule the time, and it will all happen behind the scenes, and you will have very little to do until you walk in the next day and possibly have to tweak a couple of little things, but usually it's a fairly seamless process. Would anybody disagree with that is a Bywater person?
No, they've been painless since we started with Bywater. The only thing you do have to remember is to clear your browser cache after each upgrade. And Bywater will post something in your staff news about upgrades to remind you about that as well. So it's very painless.
Um, let me think about some. I'm tired of doing all the talking. Somebody have any topics to bring up? I really like the idea of trying to unify some training. I understand exactly what Holly's talking about. As I mentioned, one of my concerns is the variance of places to find things. We've got some great stuff here on the koha-US page, but then again, there's also the Koha Wiki with all of its resources as well. Uh, Reading Barbara's question here, I'm always interested in workflows, best practices, efficiency, customizing things. We're looking at revamping our notices. Yes, the new being able to have the toolkit template, is that what it is? With the notices is, we've already implemented that in one of our notices a little bit. Has anybody else played with that yet?
I have not, but I would love to see like a comprehensive resource on Template Toolkit. I know there's stuff on the wiki, but I think there could be more.
What we ended up doing was for the rejections for purchase suggestions, we had, you have that one line that you can type in and say something specific, but it still sends out the same rejection email. And so we used the toolkit template to create a rejection reason that was basically, we're rejecting this because it's either available in the library and we're going to go ahead and place a hold on it, or because it's an interlibrary, is available through interlibrary loan. And instead of getting the generic email that says a very generic, we're rejecting this, and then the one sentence, it's a purely customized email to say, this is available through interlibrary loan, please go to this page and request it, blah, blah, and guide them to that, or let them know more specifics about it. We didn't like the way it looked when the rejection email came to people.
Oh, whoops, I just sent that to Yuyan. Yuyan? I said it wrong too. Okay, there's everybody. There's the wiki page for Template Toolkit that I was talking about. It's basically just a different syntax you use in your notices, which allows for more like logical decisions like Ed was talking about. And everything's moving towards that, but if you have the old style notices, they need to be upgraded, which Bywater can definitely help you with if you're a Bywater customer.
And if you're not, here's a reasonably decent resource to get you started.
Okay, so the template toolkit is not an add-on, but a built-in thing that you just use a different syntax in your notices?
Yes.
All right.
And I don't remember off the top of my head whether you have to make sure the HTML box is unchecked or checked. I don't wonder if this page mentions that. It may not matter. Anybody else doing any fun, interesting things from a, I don't know, display perspective in the OPAC? Anything interesting that they'd love to share with us?
Well, I've set up a, what do you want to call it? A little script that injects an URL onto the shelving location that then maps it to a map of the library that shows where that shelving location is.
Nice. Do you have that documented anywhere?
Not really. Unfortunately, it's very customized for our library.
Well, but the concept is transferable. It's just a matter of details.
Yeah, lots of details, because of course it's checking all of the shelving locations, which happen to be ours, to decide which URL to use. And that could become as much work trying to recreate it as doing it yourself. But yeah, I think the basic scripting for it could be posted somewhere.
That's an interesting idea. We have an ongoing battle with our two branches. One branch uses shelving locations and the other doesn't. And yet we're the McKinney Public Library. We're not two different libraries. But one library is multi-story and the other's not. So they use first floor, second floor and areas, whereas the single-story library doesn't. Everything is housed within all the information's within the collection code, which I think complicates things a little bit, but that's just me.
Yeah, we use our shelving location as both a physical location and quite often is the collection too.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
someone else's turn.
Yeah, well, I'm reading Barbara's statement here and I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Just started a library thing collection, but we don't want patrons to be able to choose the pickup window. So is it a location? Mask that location. Okay, so they just are hiding that. Oh, it's an item type. Okay. Okay, so you didn't want people to place a hold on something that is not necessarily a tangible item. Nice, okay. So what kind of thing is in your library thing collection? Jason, do the chats get recorded or should I be reading that?
No, you'll get a copy and everyone can make a copy at the end of the session. There's a little ... down by the chat box that says more and you can save the chat. And it'll save it to a notepad if anybody wants to save links and discussion and stuff. But it also goes into the same folder as the clock recording, so I'll have a copy of it.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure I shouldn't be having to read each one of these. All right, another question that came up that's not systems, that's more organizational. How is this time for this meeting? It was chosen because it's basically the same time, different week as an already established special interest group. You know, Rhonda started this with acquisitions on the third Tuesday at this time. And I thought we would just pick a different Tuesday and use the same time because I'm sure there's crossover. Just a good time. I'm getting a couple of positive feedbacks in here.
I think the number of people in the meeting right now is a good reflection on it being a good time. And like we've got the recording too for the people that can't make this time. I would say at this point, at least, it seems like a good time.
That was my thinking. Also, do we want to come up with topics for a session? Would you like me to think up a topic? We have a Google group, don't we?
Yes, there's a Google group that you can join. It's linked up on our special interest groups page, which I'll link to.
share that link, then what we could do is within that group over throughout a month, kind of come up with some ideas of more specifics to talk about. And I'm happy to synthesize that. I just didn't, and I'm happy to come up with a topic. I just didn't want to do that right out of the chute. I wanted to see where this group was going and how it was going to evolve. Yes, I completely agree. Knowing what the topic is ahead of time would be very useful. I think, especially if we got some interest in that Google group to kind of chat about some things and say, hey, here's what we want to talk about and be thinking about it.
And I noticed earlier in the chat, Holly mentioned maybe defining what we mean by system administration and using that as a guiding point as well.
I think that's a great idea. How do we want to define this? And I was kind of alluding to that in the beginning with the variance of systems needs of individuals in this group.
So maybe we could talk about what we don't mean to eliminate some things. So we definitely, I think, don't mean administration at the command line level. I think we're talking about administering Koha from the user interface level of things.
Okay, so we're basically talking about those that have system preference rights and all of those kinds of issues. Nobody has shared any objection to that, so I think that's kind of where we want to go. So we're thinking in terms of systems administration from the GUI perspective rather than from any kind of specifically deeper. Now, I will say that doesn't mean we may not dive a bit deeper at some point, but let's start there. All right. So I've been taking some notes. So we're looking at a meeting at this time. We're going to come up with topics beforehand, and we're going to basically keep this as GUI interface and above. Okay, looks like that's how most people are understanding it. Does anybody have anything else to contribute today? Okay, I'm reading a chat here from Marjorie. Your library uses EBSCO stacks. It's a catalog. So getting lots of stuff, and now I am behind. Okay, so basically, Marjorie, the way I'm reading your question is how Koha would interact with third parties. I don't want to, you happen to mention EBSCO, but there are other things there. Okay,
yeah, I think right now we have a situation where everything works fine. Koha is kind of embedded on the site, the EBSCO stack site. But like I said, I just have questions for how they might interact in the future if I knew more. So.
All right. We're not an EBSCO site, so I have limited experience with that, but that's what this group is for.
Thank you.
Okay, reading through Shana or Shauna?
Shanna.
Shanna, thank you. I apologize.
No, you're fine. It's unusual.
Good. Nevada Supreme Court, Law Library Stroke. So you don't want the item to display or the bib to display if it doesn't have cover art?
No, so this is the cover flow, like on the like when you first enter the OPAC, you can.
Okay, I got you there. Cover flow.
And we're struggling since we're a law library and not like a public library. There's not as many cover photos, and one of the things we struggle with is creating that cover flow without the no image found item. And I was wondering if anybody might have, you know, have had any luck with that. You know, I know that public libraries, you know, you guys have more photos because that's where I started, you know, started out. But, you know, with more popular titles in Amazon and Google Books and everything where we can pull cover photos from or even upload them, you know, that's something we struggle with, especially since we have a very small staff here. We can't go out and grab, you know, create scans of the covers of every item that we have here in the library because we're actually a very large library. We collect from all 50 states and treatises and everything for, you know, for attorneys and judges and just the general public to use.
Oh, I know it, at one point either Nick or Kyle tweaked the way to write that report to eliminate anything that didn't have a cover. But I don't remember what it is. I'd have to dig around and find it, or maybe you could contact Bywater and see if they can help with that again. Have they already tried to help with that?
No, we didn't realize that was a thing. So this group is so far has been fabulous. You know, just you know, those of us, because we adopted last February, and we're still kind of getting up to speed on this, and at the point here where we're starting to customize, you know, notices and everything, and that seems to be falling on my plate. And I'm not necessarily a systems librarian. I just have, you know, a decent, you know, background in programming and things like that. So.
I know there's a way to do exactly what you want to do. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I would go ahead and open up a ticket with Bywater, and one of them will get that taken care of pretty quickly.
And that was either Nick or Kyle that did that?
Yeah, just submit a ticket. Lucas may be doing it now. I'm 3 years back, so.
No, that's great. Thanks for that. I will reach out to them.
All right, that was a good question and a good topic. Yeah, that was one of the problems with the cover flow from the very beginning, that it would just grab things and people had a lot of blank cover art, and there is a way to prevent that. All right. You're welcome. How long do we want these meetings to be? I know we can, I think no more than an hour, but on a meeting like this, where we don't have a topic, where we're just kind of talking about things, how much longer do we want to go? Or I noticed somebody has already dropped out. About another 10 minutes?
All day. I want to be here all day.
You can be here all day. I will not be.
All right.
I have other work to do.
Yeah, the meeting doesn't have a time limit as far as Zoom is concerned. So as long as you want them to be, I would say, Ed.
Yeah.
Oh no, not more cons.
Yeah.
One con is enough. No, I'm thinking of thons, not cons. One thon is enough.
Yeah, when is that?
Koha-thon is April 23rd. Oh, I'll type it out.
Please do, because I'm supposed to be presenting, and I'd like to have a. I'd like to be prepared.
Heather. So here's a little PSA. We are holding an online all-day conference. I believe it runs from 8 a.m. on the East Coast to 8 p.m. on the West Coast. So it's like a 13-hour conference on April 23rd. And we're just having all kinds of different presentations. We'll have more information to come for sure. And it might be fun if it doesn't crash and burn, because I'm running the broadcast or helping. So
are we still looking for presenters?
I believe the deadline has passed, but the form is still open. I think that we're getting pretty full. We don't have any, we have a drafted website, Shanna, but we don't have it posted yet, but we'll get that out soon. We have a scheduling meeting after the general meeting tomorrow, so we should have some more solid information on it then, as far as what kind of presentations will be. The presentations will be recorded. It's going to be streamed live on YouTube, so we'll have the VODs from that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I think it'll be really good if we can pull it off.
All right. One of the projects I'm beginning to work on that I hope is not too high level or too deep, depending on how we want to look at it. I am going to be installing a version of Urungi on one of my test servers and starting to play with that in tying Urungi into Koha as a report tool. And we'll see how that goes. I would be willing to kind of talk about that process in the next few months as we get that going. Has anybody heard of Urungi?
I have, and I want you to do that, and I want to see how it turns out because it sounds pretty good.
It looks really good. One of the big problems that, well, Paul emailed me about a month and a half ago, and what he's struggling with there is language translation for Mark 21, because they're Unimark centric. They want to make sure they're using the right words for the Mark 21 information. So I'm not a cataloger, but those that I might be reaching out to those that are, to help look at some of that stuff and see how it works. So Heather, you might be getting emails from me in the next month or two.
And Heather put a link in the chat to what we're talking about. Right. It's basically like a way to visualize data visualization, right?
Yes. Somewhat akin to a Tableau or something like that, but it's open source.
And it syncs directly. It can sync directly with your Koha database too, right?
Correct. That's the theory.
The big selling point.
Until I get it installed and running. Yeah, when I first mentioned that to the city systems admin team, they were not too excited about it until one of the DBAs sat in a meeting and saw it and said, that looks quite interesting. So I've gotten some support from our city IT, which will be nice. Instead of pushback, I actually got support. Yes, Elasticsearch. Who's testing out Elasticsearch? Or who's already using it? Hands, anybody?
We've been live on it for a few months now.
How's it going?
It's good. It definitely needs some development. I put out something on the Bywater's partners listserv for a development we're looking at. It's only $2,000, but basically you set up all these weights for your searches, which is great. It makes the searches a lot better, except for they don't apply to the advanced search or the cataloging search, just the bar where it says search the catalog. So obviously we want those weights to apply everywhere, so the search relevancy is a bit better. So if anybody wants to contribute, and you're a Bywater customer, look at your email.
All right. Okay, so somebody's tried with their test server, but switched back. Unfortunately, I think it takes a lot of setup.
It's not too bad. I mean, Bywater does most of it for you, and you just, yeah, once you set up those weights and how you want the facets, the limiters, after you complete a search setup, there's not too much to it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely early on in where it needs to be. So I'm looking for more development. I'm hopeful more people get on so they find those bugs, report them, and put more money into development.
But it's not as simple as just turning it on.
No, you definitely need to get on the schedule. And I think they're amping up how often they're converting people. But they need to configure that and change that for you.
Elasticsearch is another good topic we could spend some time on. We could probably devote a whole meeting to just setting up Elasticsearch. Could bring in somebody from Bywater or somebody that set it up and kind of talk about it.
Micah would be a good person to ask too. I know she was involved with the early stages a lot.
Responding to Janice's question about the configuration is mostly done by Bywater staff if you're one of their customers, and then your configurations are fairly minimal, I would say. It wasn't a whole lot of, it wasn't hours and hours of work or anything.
But it is something that you need some more access than we as a, you can't do all of it from the front end, can you?
That's correct.
All right. Anything else?
Michael's question about does it require a bit of deep knowledge to set up a Bywater? No, I mean, they'll really walk you through it, what you need to do. I think we have an active, if you want to remap some things, they have an active like Google Doc that they set up with you, but they walk you through it, and basically whether you turn it loose and let your librarians report back all the bugs or whatever, I mean, or you find them in testing, you just report that back to them and they'll answer your questions in a reasonably timely fashion. Some things are, there's various bugs that are in process at various stages. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of just having them answer your questions. I think they have a, yeah, Heather just posted exactly what I was going to say. The Q&A for early testers is a good resource to give you some background. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, we had intended to be an early tester, but with all of our construction, I didn't follow up with that as I should have. All right, we've got about 10 more minutes before we hit the hour mark. Do we want to talk about anything else? Quite simply, I think this is going to be a useful group. I presume everybody agrees. As long as everybody's okay with some moments of silence. All right. Go and join the Google group. There, make suggestions for different topics. I may put something up there reminding folks. But if I post it before you join, you won't necessarily get it. You'll have to dig it out. So I'll post something probably next week about coming up with topics for our next month's meeting. It'll be second Tuesday of the month at 11 o'clock or 11 o'clock Central Time, whatever time it is in your time zone. I'm not even going to try to guess the Ireland time zone. All right. Does anybody have anything else, or are we calling this a wrap? Thank you all for coming, and we will get together again in a month. Bye.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Should I stop the recording, or can? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Marjorie,